Oh, and welcome into another episode here of the Wolves Den. You feel that? You feel that? It's a lot better coming off a W than it has been the past couple weeks after some L's here. I'm Jay Bir with you there. You see the Twitter handle. Follow me. I'm spitting hot takes all day, all night, and I happen to think I'm a pretty good follow. I did mention a win there against Georgia State. Let's just get right to it. Let's relive that moment there a little bit here. The weather cooperating a lot better this week, so that was good to see there. ESPNU game, Georgia State taking on the Red Wolves of Arkansas State. And early on in this one, and it was good to see this right here, Justice Hansen getting some runs. These were designed, and even after the game, Coach Blake Anderson sort of alluded to, that was part of the plan. But there you see a first drive touchdown. Hadn't seen that all year. Justice to Javonis Isaac there. And then the defense doing what they do. They bring pressure. You see Ronan Bingham getting the sack there. But, you know, Georgia State, they're a pretty explosive offensive team at times. You see Dan Ellington hooking up with Tamir Jones, ties things up early in this one. But the ensuing kickoff, Warren Won, that man is back there for a reason. He is diminutive. It's hard to find him. But that man is big for his size, and he is fast. Look at those feet go. My man with the twinkle toes also, tiptoeing the sideline, almost got the TD, but then Justice Hansen finishes the job off right there. Red Wolves take a 13-7 lead, missed the extra point, unfortunately. But then William Bradley King getting into the mix there. You see the big sack for him there. And then, again, more of this. Justice using his legs tonight. And as you can see there, that middle was just wide open for him most of the night. 34-yard gain there. He would finish it off with this big-time pass here. Jonathan Adams, just throw the ball up for that man, and he'll go up there and get it. Big touchdown, 20-7 lead right there. And then the defense finally getting back to their ways, forcing some turnovers. There you see balls on the deck. Tajay Chambers gets on it. One of his 2 fumble recoveries on the night. And then probably one of the plays of the year. Marcel Murray putting guys through the spin cycle. That play's a lot more impressive than what it might look like in sort of real time there. That was an athletic play here. Justin McInnis would finish off the drive right there on the fade route. I hate the fade route, but it worked that time, so I'm okay with it. Chambers here, I said he had 2 of them. Boom, right there. Ball pops right into his hands in stride. Scoop and score. The route is on. It is 34-7 at that point. But Georgia State, they're a prideful team, and they do not go away. Ellington here getting out of trouble here. Finds Cornelius McCoy. Nice throw there. Touchdown, and it's 34-14 here. But, again, Red Wolves, they would answer, and that was what you like to see on this game. They didn't fold up. Things never really got tight in this one. Justice, another run there, 41-14 there. But again, Georgia State, here in game time, they didn't even let you see the snap. But there you see Trey Barnett, excuse me, getting the run there. Cuts it to a 20-point lead again. And then Marcel Murray, that man, he is going to be good. Dragging Panthers with him there for the score. And really, it was just a matter of running the game out here. Ellington to DeAndre Champagne. Right there, they score, and Georgia State just really wouldn't go away, which you kind of like to see out of them. But there you see, defense still trying to get after him, still going through the game plan. But Georgia State definitely made some adjustments there in the second half, and then your final 51-35. Throw the stats up for me, guys, because we got plenty to sort of roll through here quickly as this game. You like to see this. ASU, balanced attack, 530 yards. You see 257 there, running 273 through the air. Georgia State, kind of in the same way, a little more heavy on the passing than they did the rushing. Third downs, we've been talking about this all season. Arkansas State, 8-13, so good on the offensive side. Georgia State, 5-14, so good on the defensive side. You finally see Arkansas State forcing some turnovers again. And the big plays, we've been talking about big plays all year. It's what this offense has been known for. They finally started to get those things clicking. You see, they doubled up Georgia State in terms of plays of 20 or more yards. That number would have been a little more vast if we kind of broke it down into 15 yards, because they had a couple of 16, 19-yard type of things as well. And then, but penalties, you see they're rearing their ugly head again. 11 penalties for Arkansas State for 109 yards. 5 of those were of the 15-yard variety. So But one of those was a pass interference call. And it was kind of one of those good pass interference calls, kind of stopped the touchdown. Georgia State would eventually score on the drive, but 2 personal fouls, 2 unsportsmanlike conducts. Those are the kind of things you kind of want to try to reel in here. But bring in our good friend here, Matt Stoltz. He's actually the play-by-play man for the Arkansas State Red Wolves. And Stoltz, thanks for joining us here. How you doing today, buddy?
Jay, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Oh, yeah. What'd you make of this game here?
Well, I think Blake Anderson kind of talked about it going into the game last week. He said that, they need to define their identity again. And I think they did that, especially offensively. The Red Wolves, as you mentioned, were able to get some big plays together, and that's exactly what they needed to do. I think all season long, at least through the first half of the season, A-State did a very good job moving the football from 20 to 20, but getting into the end zone was really the issue, and that's an issue that they seem to solve against Georgia State, and hopefully they can keep it going forward.
I guess the one thing, if there was a knock on this game, was maybe defensively, and it's not that they played bad, but that second half really gave up a lot. From your vantage point up there, was it more of Arkansas State kind of letting off the gas pedal, or did Georgia State really make some adjustments and kind of like I alluded to, they're a prideful team, they weren't going away?
Well, I think defensively, the Red Wolves did some very good things in the first half. You mentioned the turnovers. That's something A-State did not do in the first 2 conference games against Georgia Southern and Appalachian State, but they were able to force a couple of turnovers against Georgia State. That's their identity. Now, they did give up more yards than they would have liked, but at the same time, I think they were able to get some pressure on Georgia State's quarterback, and he was a very mobile guy, and he made some big plays there in that second half. Sometimes you just got to tip your cap to the other guy. But I think the A-State defensive front continues to do a good job. Raheem Bingham and William Bradley King are tied for the league lead in sacks right now with 5 apiece. And they continue to do a good job on the outside of that defensive front. And I think Kevin Thurman and also Forrest Merrill, a junior college transfer, are doing a very good job on the inside of that defensive line at those 2 defensive tackle spots.
Yeah, those guys have just – nothing has changed from last season. But I guess the one thing that would make me curious at the very least is, these guys are in the backfield. They're disrupting things. But this team tends to give up a lot of rushing yards. Now, granted, the likes of UNLV and Georgia Southern, I mean, those are run-heavy teams. So you kind of expect a little bit of that. But a lot of yards given up on the ground to Appalachian State. A lot, well, I say a lot, but over 100 even to this Georgia State team. It seems like, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, but it kind of comes in bunches here. They tend to give up some big plays just in spurts, and we always kind of see those lead to those scores. Kind of makes things harder than what they really should be. What do you make of that kind of that phenomenon?
Well, you bring up who Arkansas State has played, and it's easy to kind of just look at that rushing number and what opposing teams have been able to do to this point. But you also mentioned the teams that they've played: Georgia Southern, UNLV, Tulsa, throw in Alabama. These are teams that wanted to run the football coming in, and they're going to run the football against anybody they play. Of course, Appalachian State has had tremendous success as well in running the football this year. And, I think the Red Wolves have done a lot of good things. We talk a lot about the big plays and how A-State needs to have those big plays again offensively, but at the same time, it's been kind of the story on defense too. You go back to that Georgia Southern game, and I thought A-State's defense was terrific with the exception of 4 plays, and 3 of those 4 plays ended up being touchdowns. The 4th play against Georgia Southern ended up being a 64-yard run that set up 1st and goal for the Eagles. So I think, again, it's limiting those big plays, not only on offense, but on the defensive side of the football, too, that is key. And it's going to be key this week against Louisiana Lafayette. They're one of the better rushing teams in the league. They're top 20 in the country in rushing the football for 230 yards a game. So they got to figure out a way to kind of slow down that Cajun rushing attack.
Now, too, this team is a top 15 in terms of allowing passing yards, but when you look at it, it just doesn't seem like that they are, of that caliber, just because I think they tend to give up big plays here and there. They're not really generating at least the interceptions that they have in years past. I mean, with this secondary being sort of, I guess, as fresh and as young as some of they are, there have been some pleasant surprises back there. Jerry Jacobs kind of leading the way.
Well, you look at who Arkansas State lost, in particular at the corner spot. They lost 3 seniors from a year ago. And the big guy was Blaze Taylor, and he was an all-conference selection the last couple of years, and you had to have somebody kind of step in and fill his shoes. And you also lose a guy like Nehemiah Wagner and Kyle Martin, who got a lot of reps last year at the corner spot. So that was kind of a big question mark coming into the season. I think that Jerry Jacobs has been really one of the big bright spots on defense for Arkansas State. He was fantastic last week against one of the better receivers in the league in Georgia State's Penny Hart. In fact, Penny Hart did not have a catch until late in the third quarter.
Yeah, I was going to allude to that.
I think Jerry Jacobs is continuing to do a fantastic job. And Brandon Biner and Jeremy Smith have done a very good job as well at those corner spots as well. And then, you look at that interception number, just 4 interceptions through the first 6 games. Usually that's a higher number. I think that as far as the safeties go, Darion Jackson, B.J. Edmonds, even throwing guys like, Damari Medley, who's a fantastic young player. Also, Michael Johnson and Jeffrey Gibson doing a good job at the safety spots. That's an area where Arkansas State is still right there at the top of the league.
Absolutely, Aaron. We're kind of running some of the highlights from last week. Offensively, it seemed like they made an emphasis to go vertical with the passing game. I know a big complaint out of a lot of people that I talked to was against App State. It was a lot of side-to-side passing and not really attacking downfield. But you saw a lot of that against Georgia State. And we know we heard Blake Anderson allude to maybe just blowing the whole thing up, maybe starting over, at least on the offensive side of the ball, just because they'd hit a funk there. Do you think, just in your opinion, was that a byproduct of maybe Georgia State not being as strong of a defense as what they faced the past couple of weeks, or maybe the fact that Arkansas State came with a better game plan, maybe a little of both?
Well, I think there's several factors that go into that. First off, you had to provide some better protection for Justice Hansen. I know, it's just been rough for him the last several weeks, in particular, just having time to get rid of the football. And I think the offensive line did a better job last week against Georgia State. And then, 2, you faced a lot of defenses that have given non-traditional looks over the first half of the season. It kind of started with Tulsa. We saw some of that from UNLV, Georgia Southern as well, where a lot of the times you've got that extra man deep in the secondary, and it's more of a prevent-style look where it's tough to get those receivers over the top of those guys. So I think it's a combination of those things, but Arkansas State did a good job kind of figuring some things out to counter what they've seen to this point in the season. And, hopefully that's something that will work going forward for them.
Excuse me there. Another guy that has really stepped up offensively has been the freshman, Marcel Murray. He is becoming a fan favorite real fast. How have you seen him sort of evolve as the season goes on? And would you even kind of be advocating for maybe him getting the start? I know with this offense, it's a little different with, starting and things like that. But maybe getting a bulk of the carries over Warren Wand, considering, his production has been just unbelievable.
Well, first off, Warren Wand had a very good game as well.
Yeah, he did.
Against Georgia State. He had 13 carries for 71 yards, and he's still very valuable, not only in the run game, but also returning kicks and returning punts. I know you played the highlight earlier.
Yeah.
His 91-yard kickoff return. So he did a great job last week. He led the team in all-purpose yards. But at the same time, it's a good point. I mean, you go into the season with 2 senior running backs and Warren Wand and Armand Wewe, thinking those 2 guys are going to get the bulk of the carries. And then this true freshman comes up during preseason camp and just starts turning heads. And from the very first scrimmage on, you knew that Marcel Murray was going to be a big part of this A-State offense. And he continues to get better week by week. Just the highlights that you've played from Marcel and that incredible spin move that he had in the first half last week. Well, that showed his athleticism and the kind of moves he has. But at the same time, he had a 9-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter where he just ran over a couple of guys.
Oh, just drug that one guy for about 5 yards.
Yeah, the initial contact was made at about the 6-yard line, and he just took those guys into the end zone. So it's a great combination of athleticism and power, and he's earned more and more reps. So, yes, I think that Marcel Murray will get more and more playing time going forward.
And it seemed to, Matt, that with the success of the running game, it tends to open up the passing game. And, I guess that's football 101, if you will. Has that kind of been the one thing missing? Really, I know it seems pretty simple, but this team likes to be a little more balanced, I think, than what people think. They think it's sort of a semi-air raid type of offense, when in reality, I think it's probably closer to a Gus style where they like to run out of the spread, not necessarily run as much as Gus, but it kind of opens things up for them.
Well, you got to be able to run the football.
Yeah, sure.
That's the first thing that Blake Anderson will tell you. He wants to be able to establish the run going into any game that he plays. And, the Red Wolves ran for 273 yards last week, which was the most in any game for an A-State team since 2016.
Yeah, it's been a couple years.
I think that they did a good job in establishing the run there, with the exception of a couple of games this year. They've done a very good job running the football all season long. So I think that's something they have to do going forward. And, it's going to open up some things in the passing game. Justice Hansen, I know he got frustrated in the Appalachian State game, but he's still having a very solid senior season, 14 touchdowns to 5 picks. I'll take him over any quarterback in the league. And he's a guy that I think regained a little bit of confidence as well last week. And, I think we've got a very good receiving core still. Yes, you're missing some guys that you kind of counted on going into the season. Dahu Green, the Oklahoma transfer, was a guy that you expected to get big things from, and he was injured in the second quarter of the first game. So he's out for the year with that ankle fracture. And then, Kendrick Edwards has been out the last couple of weeks. Brandon Bowling, who was doing a very good job at the inside receiver spot, that slot receiver position, he's out for the year now, and he was doing a very good job as well. So you need some other guys to step up, and you're going to get some of these one-on-one matchups with the success of the run game, and you need these receivers to kind of step up and win some of these 50-50 battles, and hopefully they can do that.
And too, man, I know coming into this game there were some offensive line changes. Seemed to work. From what you saw in weeks previous compared to this week, what was that combination that seemed to work?
Well, we saw the Corning native, Clint Harvey, get his first start at the left guard position, and by all accounts did a fantastic job, graded out well according to the A-State coaches. So hopefully he's able to continue to have success going forward. And you've got a bigger A-State offensive line than we've ever had before, but really just two guys that had significant playing time from a season ago. And the center, Jacob Still, who's an all-conference caliber player as a sophomore. And then you've got maybe the best offensive lineman in the league at left tackle in Leonard Bonner. Outside of that, you've got some size, but a lot of inexperience. And I think it's kind of been a learning process for several of those guys. And it's good to see a guy kind of earn some more playing time like Clint Harvey did. And, hopefully that kind of pushes the other guys a little bit. And they continue to give Justice some time to get rid of the football and continue to block for those running backs so they can continue to have the success that they did last week.
And that is definitely the key. Last thing here, Matt, we'll kind of move on to Louisiana Lafayette here. In that football facility, I mean, how much did this win just take a monkey off of not just coaches' back, but players and I'm sure the fans that you've been able to talk with? It's just a sigh of relief that they're back on the winning side of things.
Well, there's no doubt, first of all, that there was a lot of frustration after starting conference play 0-2, especially after going 3-1 in non-conference play.
Right.
It was the first winning record in non-conference play since 1995. Even with the success the last 7 seasons that A-State has had, they had not done that, finishing non-conference play with a winning mark. So I think the expectations went up another notch after that kind of success. And then you start with that, loss in the last minute at Georgia Southern, and then Appalachian State is able to come into Jonesboro and win pretty handily in the second week of conference play. So, yeah, there was frustration. I know the fans felt it, but believe me, just being around these coaches and players, they felt it even more. So it was good for them to kind of, as you said, get that monkey off their back and get that win last week. And hopefully, these guys are smiling a little bit more this week. And I think, the focus is there. The effort has never been a question with this team.
Right.
Blake Anderson has always talked about that. It's just executing, getting more of those big plays offensively and trying to limit the number of big plays on the defensive side of the ball.
And they finally put it all together here. And just to let everybody be known, they are still in this thing. Again, with the divisional setup, it kind of changes the whole scene here with the Sun Belt Conference Championship. So there's still a lot to play for. And, in fact, coming up this week, a lot would probably say this is for the Western Division title. Still a lot to be decided on that, though. But Louisiana Lafayette, the Ragin' Cajuns next week. This is a game that's going to be at 6 o'clock, ESPN Plus. So if you hadn't signed up for it, this is one you might want to sign up for here. Let's get into our keys of the game here. Matt, you kind of alluded to it earlier. This Louisiana Lafayette team runs the ball, but offensively for Arkansas State, they're going against a defense that gives up about 36 points a game. They allow a lot of rushing yards, and they're pretty solid there in their backfield, only allowing about 236 per game. Still kind of in the bottom half of the middle, if you will, in terms of defensively across the country here. What do you make of this matchup here? Arkansas State's offense, Louisiana Lafayette's defense.
Well, I think we kind of alluded to it earlier. Both teams want to come out and try to establish the run. You look at, what the Cajuns have done defensively to this point. Yeah, numbers-wise, they don't blow you away. But then you go back just 1 week ago, they held Appalachian State, one of the better offensive teams around, to just 27 points in Boone. So that tells you that they're making progress. They're a team that, we don't know if they're going to be a three-man front 1 week or a four-man front the next. They've got that hybrid linebacker defensive end, and you don't know what they're going to do with him from week to week. But, we'll see on Saturday, and hopefully A-State can come out and establish the run. You mentioned other teams have been able to run the football against them. A-State needs to do that if they're going to have a chance to win this game on the road.
Okay, now on the flip side here, Arkansas State's defense obviously allowing a lot of rushing yards. Again, maybe a little bit of a product of whom they've played. And again, I know I alluded to this earlier, passing. Teams aren't passing against them, but again, a little bit of the product of what they've got going on here, only allowing 169 a game through the air. Their defense needs to come through here as well. Andre Nunez, he can kind of throw the ball around a little bit, just shy of 1,200 yards passing. He's got an 11-4 touchdown interception. He's not much of a runner, though. Do you think that sort of plays into Arkansas State's advantage, at least from a defensive standpoint?
Well, it's a change for the A-State defense. Almost every week they've played a quarterback that's a dual threat. So Andre Nunez, you're right, to this point has not really run the football much. However, what stands out to me is that touchdown to interception ratio that you mentioned.
Yeah.
11-4 is impressive. He's an improved player from what we saw in the past. And then you look at their running backs, Jay. I mean, Trey Regis and Elijah Mitchell are two of the better running backs in the league. And, Regis is leading the league in rushing at 97 yards a game. Mitchell's rushing for a little over 70, and it really starts up front. And, Blake Anderson talked about it earlier this week. The number one thing that stands out about the Cajuns is their size. They're very big. And
They're some big dudes.
Mark Hudspeth, the former head coach there, did a good job recruiting that size, and that's something that Billy Napier has now inherited. And, his offense seems to be getting better week to week. So, they can move the football. A-State's got to find a way to stop the run, and hopefully they can do that on Saturday.
Now, obviously, this is a rival game. It gets heated. We've seen it kind of while out down there. Penalties obviously going to be a thing in this game. We know Arkansas State's issue with penalties. They're one of the most penalized teams in the country. Louisiana Lafayette, though, they're not so penalized in terms of yardage and even in penalties, just actual penalties themselves. In fact, Lafayette only about 45 yards per game. That puts them in the top 25 in terms of penalties. But kind of a weird phenomenon here. Arkansas State seems to draw penalties out of people. We saw it against Georgia Southern, another very disciplined team. App State, both of those teams going over their averages in terms of penalties. I guess kind of what do you make of that? And, with the atmosphere, Arkansas State known for kind of playing as some loose cannons. What do they have to do to sort of reel that in, kind of keep your cool?
Well, a couple things on that. Number one, A-State, the games that they've been least penalized are the games that they seem to have lost this year. The games where they have more penalties, they seem to win. It is a little bit ironic. At the same time, Blake Anderson wants his team to come out and play with a tremendous amount of emotion, and he wants them to play kind of on the edge, but don't cross that line. And that's something he's preached ever since he arrived at Arkansas State. The guys need to know where that line is at. Those 15-yard personal fouls or something, yes, you have to limit. At the same time, this is a game where over the years we've seen a whole lot of emotion. I'd be shocked if nobody or if either team came out of it, without a personal foul, just because, it's one of those games where it is a rivalry game. It's heated, especially, when these games are played in Lafayette for one reason or another. It seems to be more heated when these two teams meet at Cajun Field. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out on Saturday. However, it has been an emphasis. In fact, Blake Anderson, when he met with his team on Sunday after a Sunday afternoon practice, told his team, exactly that. We've got to be able to limit those personal fouls and really control ourselves because it is going to get heated on Saturday night.
And even going back to that Georgia State game, first couple of quarters, pretty nice in terms of the penalties. I believe they only had one personal foul in that first half, but then it was kind of the second half when things were a little bit decided that things kind of ramped up, kind of got heated there. Is that kind of a byproduct? And I know we kind of harp on the penalties here, and I know fans are really – but when you really look at it in those terms, are they – you never want to have 15-yarders, but is it really as bad as what a lot of folks make it out to be?
Well, again, these guys, and I'll kind of go back to a point I made earlier, Blake Anderson has talked about the effort level in every single game and how it's been there. These guys are playing hard. And sometimes when you're out there playing hard and maybe pressing a little bit, that's when the personal fouls happen. I know there's been a lot of frustration, especially after the losses to Georgia Southern and Appalachian State. And, these guys, I think, have to find a way to kind of harness that aggression a little bit. And hopefully, that's something they've figured out. And again, Blake Anderson has made an emphasis about that kind of leading up to this game all week long.
All right, obviously another standout key here is going to be red zone, both sides of the ball here. Louisiana Lafayette, when they get in the red zone, they score. It's been kind of at a pretty unbelievable clip. They score 87% of the time that they're in the red zone, and of that 87%, 83% of the time they make it a touchdown. That puts them third in the country in terms of TD percentage in the red zone. Arkansas State, they've had their struggles. They only score, it doesn't seem like a big difference, but 81% of the time. That puts them 91st in the country as opposed to ULL at 39. And unfortunately for Arkansas State, and this has kind of been one of those big frustrating points for fans, and I would imagine the team alike, they can't punch it in. 52% of the time that they score in the red zone, it's a touchdown. 111th in the country compared to 82 there for Lafayette. I guess, Matt, how pivotal and how, I guess the stats sort of speak for themselves on how important the red zone is going to be against the Raging Cajuns.
Well, that's a lot of numbers you just threw at me.
I'm telling you.
You look at what Arkansas State did through the first 6 regular season games.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, and Blake Anderson went back and they took a look at exactly what they were doing 30 to 30, and then once they got inside the 30, what they were doing and how teams were kind of playing them there. So they've really broken down every single play and compared what they're doing on every part of the football field. And I think that they were able to kind of go back after looking at those first 6 games and figure some things out last week. And you look at what they did against Georgia State, finding the end zone was not a problem. They got in the end zone a bunch. And I think that hopefully they've solved a lot of that issue. Now, you mentioned the red zone. Another thing I want to mention is third downs.
Yeah, that was our next point even.
Yeah, third downs are huge. And you look at what the Cajuns have done to this point. They're top 5 in the nation in third down efficiency. So they're doing a very good job on third down. However, they're one of the worst teams in the nation as far as third down defense. So hopefully A-State can have some success in that area. And then, A-State did a very good job last week after going 3 for 17 against Appalachian State. I think they went 8 for 13 against Georgia State. So that was a big improvement from week to week, and that's the kind of number. Anytime you hit that 50% mark, Blake Anderson's going to be fairly happy with that. So hopefully they can hit that number this week. If they do, I think they can have a lot of success.
And just because I'm a numbers guy, I'll throw them out there for you guys. ULL, 48 of 90. That puts them at 53%. Like you said, top 5 in the country. Arkansas State, 42 of 110. So they've had a few more opportunities, and that's just kind of the nature of their offense, but only converting at a 38% clip, putting them at 77th in the country. So not too bad, but not all that great either. And you mentioned something there with the red zone. It seemed like, too, there were a lot of actual red zone touchdowns for Arkansas State this past week. I know they had a couple from far out, and you like that, but I want to say 3 or 4 of those touchdowns that they scored this past week came from inside the 20. I mean, how encouraging is it to finally see that running game going? I mean, we saw Marcel Murray dragging some guys. Justice Hansen bulldozing his way on some of those QB draws. How encouraging is it to see them be able to score in the red zone, score touchdowns at that, and then do it using some of that power game that's kind of been absent from the red zone in the past few weeks?
Well, yeah, you mentioned Marcel Murray's touchdown run. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
It helps when you've got a guy that can just bulldoze a couple of guys into the end zone. That's a big help anytime you have a guy like that. But at the same time, Justice is very good and I heard you earlier, you don't like those fade routes, but when you've got a guy like Justin McInnes at 6'6", that is a tough matchup for anybody in this league, and you can throw it the way Justice does, then you should be able to have a lot of success in the throw game, especially on that route. And then, at the same time, you mentioned Justice and the way he runs in football. I think we get caught up a lot of the times in just how good of a passer he is. And, he broke the school record last week for touchdown passes in the career, passing Ryan Applin, now has 70 touchdown passes in his career. And remember, Justice, didn't come to Arkansas State until he was a redshirt sophomore. He was 4 games in to his redshirt sophomore season before he started a game here. So he's been able to pass that record in a relatively short amount of time. And, he's still got half of the senior season remaining. So, Justice does a good job throwing the football, but he's one of our best weapons when it comes to running the football as well. He does a good job reading those defenses, and when he takes off, he may not look like the fastest guy out there, and he's not, but at the same time, he is pretty deceptive. He's faster than you think, and he has been effective over the years running the football for this A-State offense. It's
those big strides. He's covering so much ground. It's a little slower, but when you're covering that much ground at 3 yards per step, I mean, hey, what do you do? Another interesting factoid here in this series is if you're on the road, chances are you're not winning. In fact, since 2001, only 3 times has the road team won. Arkansas State in 2012, and then Lafayette in 09 and 13. What is it about? It's just such a phenomenon there that nobody, and as good as Arkansas State's been in past years even, and as good as Lafayette was even in the middle 2000s, it doesn't seem to matter with these teams. The home team's going to win. What is it about going to both of these places against these teams that just it's just kind of an odd little quirk in this series?
Well, it is, and I can't figure it out. I mean, there's been a lot of close games over the years. In fact, more often than not, it's a very close game. We've seen a lot of games go down to the wire. In fact, 2 years ago in Lafayette, it was a game that A-State thought they won on the final play of the game.
Oh, yeah.
celebrated, only to have replay overturn it, and then the Cajuns ended up being the one celebrated. So that was a game that certainly stands out in this series. Again, there's a lot of emotion involved. I think the crowd obviously plays a big factor into these games. But yeah, you can even go back further than what you mentioned. Yeah, just 3 times in the last 26 years, dating back to 1992, has the road team won. And the only time that A-State has won during that stretch was when Gus Malzahn was here back in 2012. That run it again.
Run it again. That's it.
Continued to run the same play over and over again, and ended up scoring 50 points in a 50-27 win. So that was a very memorable win. But at the same time, there's been a lot of close losses for the Red Wolves in Lafayette, and hopefully A-State can change history a little bit coming up on Saturday night.
Yeah, a lot on the line here for that one for sure here. Let's get outside the gridiron because there's a lot of good stuff going on all over Arkansas State, especially here recently. Kind of chime in when you want to there, Matt. But this golf team, they are just in some big time. I mean, they're just in a completely different stratosphere from what we've ever seen with this golf team. They came back from 9 strokes to win the Little Rock Invitational, beat a host of teams, number 23 UNLV in that one. Matthew Cole tied for second. Luca, I might butcher this, so Luca, I'm sorry out there. Naglick also tied for 6th. What have you made of this golf team, and really what's the attitude that seems to have changed this whole program?
Well, Mike Hagan, I think, is where you got to start.
Man.
He's come in and done a fantastic job. Great hire by Terry Mahajer. He did a fantastic job up in Iowa, and he's come down and just established a big-time program. And you see him ranked now in the top 20, 25, whatever poll you're looking at. And every week they got a chance to go out and win a tournament now. So I think he's the guy that's kind of come in and changed the mindset. He's done a great job bringing in some international players that have been able to have a lot of success. And it's neat to talk about a top 25 team. No matter what sport you're playing.
Absolutely. Soccer also, they've made it to the tournament. They are in. Still got some seeding to sort of figure out as of when we're recording here, but that will start on Halloween here. They play Coastal Carolina Thursday afternoon and then would get set for the Sun Belt tournament. How have you seen this program evolve over the past couple of years? And they kind of hit a bump in the road the past couple of weeks after a pretty historic start for them. What do you make of the team kind of getting into the tournament here?
Well, it wasn't too long ago that making the tournament was a big deal for Arkansas State soccer. It just wasn't a program that historically had much success. But now, you're looking at a winning record in conference play. That's something that just had not happened much at all in the past. So to see them not only being competitive, but winning some big games now, I think says a lot about where this program has come.
Absolutely, and also cross country doing some things as well. Their last meet was a couple of weeks ago here in Little Rock. Women finished 5th, men 2nd. They also had a team of some of the girls go up to the pre-nationals in Wisconsin, finished 31st overall, but some good times there. You like to see that. Bowling also getting going. I know people are saying, Arkansas State is a bowling school. They're going to get things going here coming up Saturday, the Bearcat Hammer Open in Illinois. And then finally, it's almost basketball season here. As of right now, we don't know what the men's picks are or anything like that, so we'll cover that next week for sure. But we have the women's side of things. Arkansas State picked 5th. Kasha Westbrook also on the first team preseason all Sun Belt. What do you make of the women's team here, Matt? I know it's been a rough couple of years, and to be honest, a lot of teams are kind of enjoying this, especially after the run that the Arkansas State women's hoops team had the past few years with some of the talent that they've had. But now they're kind of getting back into things. Picked 5th, maybe not quite the easy game as what they were even last year, the year before.
Well, you got to go back 2 years ago, and that team that won 26 or whatever games it was with Andrea Gamble, who was a 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. It was just loaded with seniors that season. And Brian Boyer knew last year was going to be a rebuilding year with a whole lot of young players getting experience. And I think they steadily made progress. And Acacia Westbrook was a player that wasn't healthy all year long. And had to miss some games. She's somebody that is very deserving of that first team All-League honor. And I think that they're picked fifth, but at the same time they're very, very talented. And I can guarantee you, Brian Boyer is about as excited about this bunch as any team he's had in a while, just because of the youth, the enthusiasm that they bring to practice every day. And I think there's a lot of hope kind of going forward for A-State women's basketball. And then on the men's side, year two for Mike Bellato and his coaching staff, and he went out and tried to recruit some certain players, and for the most part he was able to get everybody he wanted to come in. And I think he likes the guys that have transferred in. He likes the young guys that are kind of stepping up. Marquise Eaton is one guy that is kind of coming to mind right now. He played a lot last year, became a starter about midway through the conference season, and he's a Jonesboro High School guy, and really has made big strides by all accounts in the offseason. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Ty Cockfield, who was very good last year in his first season at A-State, is a senior now, and looking forward to seeing big things from him too. And
I guess quickly here, Matt, what do you expect out of this men's team? And also too, before you answer that, I want to note here that I know it's been hard to keep up with Arkansas State men, both basketball teams here, but ESPN Plus coming through clutch. Going to have a lot of games for you guys this year. 17 of the men's games, 7 of the women's game on ESPN Plus this season, so you can kind of keep up. But what do we expect out of this men's team since we don't have the polls and everything as of right now? What can we see different from this year's team as opposed to last year?
Well, last year I think Mike Bellato was just trying to establish a culture, and I think he did that. I think he sent some messages with some of the moves that he made, and one thing that he kind of sent as far as the message goes was midway through the conference season when he parted ways with one of his best players, if not his best player. And to make that kind of statement, I don't think a lot of head coaches would do, but that's not Mike Bellato. He's a guy that came in and said, hey, I'm thinking long term. It's not a short-term project for him. He wants to build an attitude, build that kind. I use that word culture again, but that's what he's trying to do here at Arkansas State. And I think he took a very big first step in year one, and hopefully year two kind of sees it pay dividends a little bit. He really likes the attitude of this team. I think he likes the character of this team about as much as any team he's been around, either as an assistant or now as a head coach. So I think that says a lot, and it should be a fun bunch to be around. I think we're going to win quite a few more games than we saw this team win a season ago.
Well, we can only hope so. A little breaking news here for you. They just released the men's polls and everything like that. Georgia State picked to win. Southern and Louisiana tied for second. Arkansas State all the way down there at 9th, ahead of Coastal, Texas Arlington, and Little Rock. So you've kind of got that. Let me take a look through the – and Ty Cockfield also on the 3rd All-Sun Belt preseason team there. And obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of Southern, a lot of State, a lot of Louisiana on the preseason polls there. What do you make of that? 9th, sound about right to you?
Well, those preseason polls are something I don't take a lot of stock in. I don't think the coaches take a lot of stock in either, no matter what sport you're talking about. I will tell you it's what I expected, because most of those polls are based off what happened a season ago.
Sure.
And who you have coming back. I think there's a lot of unknown when it comes to Arkansas State. Do I expect A-State to be the 9th best team in the Sun Belt? No, I think they're going to be better than that. At the same time, I'm not surprised at who's at the top.
Sure, yeah.
We have some very good teams in this league. You look at Georgia State. They've got one of the better players in the country kind of leading them. And at the same time, Georgia Southern has Tukey Brown back for his senior season. And
Great name, too.
Louisiana Lafayette is a very, very good basketball team. It would not surprise me to see them win the league. Bob Marlin has brought in a lot of Division I transfers, and they got a lot of experience, a whole lot of talent. And again, I would fully expect those 3 teams to be fighting for the top, and I'll be interested to see if Arkansas State can kind of work their way into the mix sometime soon.
I guess we'll have to find out here. Matt Stoltz, the Red Wolf voice on the Twitter machine. You can also hear him on all of those calls as well. My man, we appreciate you. We're going to bring you back come basketball season for sure and get a better breakdown once we kind of have an idea of what's going on.
Hey, great to visit with you, and go Red Wolves.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Also, programming note for you guys, the Sun Belt Conference title game for football announced a couple days ago, at least as of when we're recording here. It's going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff, so get your breakfast ready right after College Game Day on ESPN, and that's December 1st. So hopefully, Red Wolves will be in that thing, and we'll have a nice special coming up for you guys here. Woo, a lot to digest there, and hopefully you got through all of that. A lot of things going on up there in Jones Boogie, so make sure you keep up with it. Again, Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns, coming up this weekend, 6 o'clock, ESPN Plus. We'll have all the breakdown for you coming up next week. Got a good buddy of mine coming in, and he's probably just as good as old Stoltz there when it comes to insider knowledge there, so we call that a tease here in the business. That will do it for us here this week. Hope you join us back next week for another edition of the Wolves Den. We'll see you then.